Okay, today's lesson is chapter 3, lesson 4, equations of lines. So what are properties of parallel and perpendicular lines? At the end of this lesson, you'll know how to write equations of lines, and you'll be more familiar with what's important when comparing parallel and perpendicular lines. So the first two pieces of information we need to review. All of this is from algebra. This entire lesson is from algebra, but we are going to apply it to shapes when graphing shapes moving forward. So we're spending an entire lesson reviewing it so that you remember and you're good to go when we apply it to shapes. So first we have slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. And the m stands for slope, and the b is the y-intercept whenever we graph this equation. So if we were going to graph this on a line, we would have a number here. We can't graph this exact equation. We'd have to have a number here and a number here. This number would tell us how our line moves, our slope of our line from left to right, and this number tells us where we cross our y-intercept. And then we also have point-slope form. It's another way to write a linear equation. These are both linear equations. There are ways to write an equation that when you graph it, they graph and they form a straight line when you plot on a coordinate plane. So for point slope form, it's y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. And here, the only numbers that you would have plugged in would be y1, m, and x1. Just like over here, m is your slope of your line. And then instead of knowing the y-intercept like we did over here, in this problem, we don't have to know the y-intercept, but we do have to know one of the points on the line, anywhere on the line, just one of the points on the line. And then the x value of that point would go here, and the y value of that point would go here. Everything that I don't have highlighted will always stay that. We never will replace those letters with numbers. The only letters we replace with numbers are the ones I've highlighted in yellow. So these and these, okay? So when it says write an equation of a line, your equation should never have the letter M or the letter B in it. You should always replace those with numbers. Same here. You should never have a letter here, a letter here, or a letter here. You should always replace those with numbers, okay? So let's do some examples. First, we have write an equation in slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b. I tried to keep it color-coded here, whatever, coordinated, of the line with a slope of 6 and a y-intercept of -3. Graph the line. So our slope is 6, that's our m, and our y-intercept is -3. So we actually don't have to do any math here. They give us everything we need. This is our b, our y-intercept. So all we have to do to write our equation, we have y equals mx plus b. I gotta keep everything color-coded for my visual learners. Okay, and then when I actually plug in these numbers, I'm gonna have y equals 6x plus -3. And when you plus a negative number, here we'll write it plus, and then our y-intercept is -3. But we can't leave it like that because we have two signs that are touching right here, and you can't leave it like that. So when the two signs touching are not the same, we replace them with one minus sign. So y equals 6x minus 3. So this is our equation of our line. This is what we have to graph. And our slope is 6, and our y-intercept is -3. So when we go to our graph, first thing we're going to do, we always begin, here we'll even write it over here to the side, to graph. We're going to begin by plotting the b. That's your y-intercept. You always start there. And then after you've plotted that b value, then you're going to move according to your slope. And the slope is m, so you can remember that. Move according to the slope. And I'll do the whole thing in red. And we always read a graph and plot on a graph from left to right. We never go backwards when you're plotting numbers. You can go backwards if you're backtracking. That's a whole different thing. When you're plotting a graph, we always do it from left to right. Okay, so for here, we start off with -3. So we start here at 0. It's our y-intercept. So 1, 2, 3, and we put our dot. That's where we begin. From that dot, don't start over up here. From this dot, we're going to move up 6 and over 1. Our slope is rise over run. It's just 6. So when a number's not a fraction, you just put it over 1. And that makes it a fraction. So this is really 6 over 1, which means we go up 6 and over 1 starting here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 over 1. Once you have 2 dots, you can plot your line. Oh man, here. Y'all know I can't draw a straight line. So your graph of your line should look something like that. Let's do another one. The next one is in point slope form. So it's the other y minus y equals m times x minus x, that one. Okay, so write an equation in point slope form of a line with a slope of -3/5, and it contains the point -10, 8. So that's where we plug in the x1 and y1. So our equation, if you remember, is y minus y1 equals m times x minus x1. Okay, so when we actually plug in our numbers, we're going to have y minus a number equals m times x minus a number. And it tells us our slope is -3/5. And the point that lies on our line is -10, 8. -10 is our y value, or sorry, our x value. So it goes over here. And we put the negative sign with it, -10. And then 8, positive 8, is our y value, so it goes over here. So we kind of had to flip-flop them. Don't get confused and put this number here and this number here. That's incorrect. This is your x, this is your y. So now all we have to do is simplify. Y minus 8 equals -3 over 5, parentheses, x plus 10. Right? Because we had minus and negative, so we replaced it with our plus sign. So now, if we're going to plot that, to graph that, all we're going to do is start with our point. We can put it over here. To graph. First, we're going to plot our given point. Plot x1, y1, and then we're going to move according to our slope. Just like before. Move, we'll say move by the slope. Okay, so we're going to plot -10, 8. Now, in this graph that they give us, they don't give us 10 squares, right? And we don't really have room to draw a bigger graph. So what can we do? Well, they give us these little squares, so we could say that each square is 2 units, right? So instead of going back 10 squares, we're only going to go back 5 because we're going to count by 2s. So we're going to go back 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, and then up 8. And again, they're by 2s. So 2, 4, 6, 8, right there. This point right here lies on our line, whichever direction our line goes. From that point, we're going to move according to the slope, which is -3/5. So we're going to go down 3 over 5. Down 1, 2, 3, over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, some of you might have noticed that while I counted each box as 2, I didn't count it 2 for my slope, right? That's because when you use your slope, you keep moving down your line with the same slope. So if I'd have actually used my little 2-unit boxes here, I would have gone down 2 and then 1 more and over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I would lie on my line. And then if I did it again, I would end up at this point. So it's kind of like I just did my slope twice to get here. It's the same slope, so you'll end up in the right space. So when we're using slope, you actually don't have to use that little 2-unit grid, but you can. Same thing. Okay, let me know if you have questions on that. Example 3, now we're gonna get into the math part of it. They don't just give us the slope and the y-intercept, we actually have to solve for it. So it says write an equation of the line through each pair of points in slope-intercept form. So that's our y equals mx plus b. Okay, Okay, so this is 2 steps here, kind of 2 steps. First step is we have to find our slope, right? Normally our first step is to write the slope in. We don't know the slope here. So first thing we want to do is find slope. How do we find slope when we have 2 points? Y minus y over x minus x, right? So we have our x and our y and our x and our y. So I'm going to do 9 minus 0 over 4 minus negative 2. And when you have minus and negative, it just turns into a plus. 9 minus 0 is 9. 4 plus 2 is 6. And then I can simplify that fraction. I can divide the top and the bottom both by 3. So I get 3 over 2. That's the slope of my line. This is an improper fraction, and we talked about improper fractions, and you want to change it to a mixed number, but not with slope. Slope is rise over run. If we changed it to a mixed number and had a number out front, it wouldn't make sense. So you have to leave it in this form when you're talking about slope. Okay, so before we move on to the next step, you have to rewrite y equals mx plus b with the slope in now. So y equals, instead of mx plus b, now we have 3 over 2x plus b. Okay, so step 2, now we have to figure out what b is, right? Well, we can't solve for b when we have 2 other variables here that we don't know what they are. You can't solve for one letter if you don't know what the other letters are. But they give us 2 sets of x's and y's up here. Both of these points lie on this line. They're both solutions to the same line. So you can pick one, doesn't matter which one, you'll get the same answer at the end. Pick one of these and you can plug in, let's say we pick the first one, 4 for x and 9 for y. I'm going to say find b in step 2. So we're going to use 9 equals 3 over 2 times 4 plus b. Now b is the only variable, so I can solve for b at this point. Okay, so when I multiply here, I'm going to change 4 to a fraction. When I multiply fractions again, I go straight across the top, straight across the bottom. 9 equals 12 over 2 plus b. 12 over 2 is just 6, right? So to get b alone, I need to subtract 6. And then I have to do the same thing to the other side of the equal sign. 9 minus 6 is 3. If I subtract this 6, it goes away. So I get b equals 3. Am I done? No, it says write an equation of a line. I haven't written the full equation yet, right? Make myself room over here. So I had from step 1, y equals 3 over 2x plus b. Now I know what b is, so I'm going to put it all together. Y equals 3 over 2x plus 3. And that's our answer. So make sure in your final answer you don't have the letter M or the letter B in your equation. You're not done if you have either one of those letters. They should be replaced with a number. Okay, same exact thing over here. And you are going to have problems like this on your assignment, which is why I'm showing you examples here. So please use this video to help you. Okay, step 1, we have to find the slope. So we're going to use y minus y over x minus x. Negative 7 minus 3 over negative 3 minus negative 1. Minus a negative becomes a plus. We have negative 10 over negative 2. A negative divided by a negative is a positive. 10 divided by 2 is just 5. So our slope is 5, and I'm going to write my equation. Y equals 5x plus b. Now I just have to find b. So step 2, I'm going to pick one of these numbers up here. Doesn't matter which one. I'm going to use these. It looks like a little easier to use. And I'm going to plug negative 1 in for x and 3 in for y to solve for b. So I'm going to have 3 equals 5 times negative 1 plus b. 3 equals negative 5 plus b. To get b alone, we need to get rid of negative 5, so we're going to add 5 on both sides of our equal sign. And when we do that, we get 8 equals b. But we're not done, because you got to write your equation. So let's take this one up here, y equals 5x plus b from step 1, and add in b now in step 2. Y equals 5x plus 8. That's our final answer. Hopefully that makes sense. Next, we're gonna solve this bottom challenge problem. If you can't see the whole thing, it is in the file. These blank notes are included in this folder on Schoology, so you can always pull it up and look at it there. If you wanna try it yourself first and then just double check yourself with the video, you can, but I'm gonna solve the whole thing now. It's kind of long, so I'm gonna give myself more room. I think they were wanting you guys to use your own paper here, I'm not really sure. Okay, so here it says, find the value of n so that the line perpendicular to the line, negative 2y plus 4 equals 6x plus 8, passes through points in negative 4 and 2, negative 8. Okay, like how do I even start there, right? Like I don't even know what they're talking about. This is an x value, this is a y value. Okay, so first it says find n, and I see an n down here, so I assume that's what I'm finding. Okay, so that the line perpendicular to, so I'm gonna have to come up with an equation of a line that's perpendicular to negative 2y plus 4 equals 6x plus 8. So step one, I'm going to come up with my equation of a line, right? So first thing I have to do is figure out slope. So I know it's perpendicular to this line. I'll move this out of the way. We'll come back to it. I know my line is perpendicular to this line, but I don't know what the slope of this line is, right? Well, we can really easily get it in the form y equals mx plus b. All we have to do is get y alone. And then on the other side, on the other side of our equal sign, whatever number's in front of x, that's our slope. And whatever the slope is of this equation, our slope of our equation is going to be the negative reciprocal of that. It's going to be perpendicular. So first I want to get y alone here. So I'm going to get rid of the 4. Whatever I do on one side of the equal sign, I got to do it to the other. No, it's a positive 4. And then I got to divide by negative 2. These go away. Y equals negative 3x minus 2. So here's this equation. But my equation doesn't have the same slope. It has a perpendicular slope. So what's perpendicular? What's perpendicular to negative 3 over 1? Positive 1 over 3. You flip it upside down, you change the sign. Positive 1 over 3. So that's my slope. My slope. So for my equation of my line, I'm going to have y equals, I'm going to put it in the form y equals mx plus b, y equals 1/3 x, and then that's all I know so far. I just know my slope, that's it. So second step is now to solve for b, right? Step 2, we're going to solve for b. So I'm going to use my equation, y equals 1/3 x plus b, and it gives me a couple points to plug in for x and y. Remember, if I'm solving for b, I want b to be the only variable in the equation, right? If I have an x and y, I can't solve for the other variables if I don't know what x and y are. So I got to plug something in for x and y. They give me two sets of x's and y's here. Either one, if I plug them in, would give me the same answer. However, I'm missing this number. It's a variable. So if I use this ordered pair, I'd be plugging a variable in for a variable and I couldn't solve. So I'm going to use this ordered pair, 2, negative 8. X is 2, y is negative 8. And I'm going to plug negative 8 in for y and 2 in for x. Okay, so now I'm going to start simplifying. I'm going to make 2 a fraction just by putting it over 1. And for fractions, when I multiply, I just multiply straight across the top, straight across the bottom. So I'm going to get 2/3 plus b. Last thing I need to do now to get b by itself is subtract 2/3 from both sides of my equal sign. So these go away, and I'm left with b equals, and negative 8 minus 2/3. If I'm down in a hole 8 feet and I go down 2/3 of a foot more, how far am I down? Now I'm down 8 2/3, right? So there's my b value. So now I have b, I can plug it into my equation up here, and I'll get y equals 1/3 x minus 8 2/3. Okay, so that looks pretty complicated because we got fractions, but it's okay. Our very, very, very last step, now that I have the equation of our line, which they started off telling me was perpendicular to this other line they gave me, now I gotta solve for n. So n is my x value, -4 is my y value. When y is -4, what is n going to be, right? Basically, we're solving for our x value. So n comma -4 to this equation. So I'm going to plug -4 in for y, 1/3 times n minus 8 2/3. So now I have to solve this bad boy, right? And I'm telling you guys, it's a lot of work. This is a complicated problem. Okay, so first off, I want to add 8 2/3 to both sides of my equal sign. So plus 8 2/3 plus 8 2/3, right? And so these go away. If I'm 4 feet down in a hole and I come up 8 2/3, I'm going to end up above ground 4 2/3 equals 1/3 n. Okay, and the very, very, very last thing I need to do is to get rid of this times 1/3. To get rid of a fraction, you multiply by the reciprocal. So I'm going to multiply by 3 over 1, which is just 3, right? It's just the number 3. So I'm going to multiply this side by 3. So this 1/3 and this 3 cancel. And for this 3, I have to multiply the 4 by 3, so I'll get 12. And I have to multiply 2/3 times 3. So 3 times 2 is 6. That's 6/3. Right? So I get 12 and 6/3. Can I change 6/3 to anything? Yes, it's 2, right? 2. So I have 12 and 2, which is 14. Oops, not B. And I'm used to solving for B, sorry. So the value of n is going to be 14. Instead of n comma -4, I'm going to get 14 comma -4. If that sort of makes sense. That was like a lot of work for one problem. The idea wasn't hard, it was just a lot of work. So n equals 14, and that ordered pair would become 14 comma -4. Sort of kind of makes sense, I hope. Don't get hung up on it. That was a challenge. It literally says challenge. That was a hard problem. Okay, backside of notes. Example 4, write an equation of each line in slope-intercept form. So again, that's y equals mx plus b. Given the information. Okay, so our goal is to figure out what m is and figure out what b is. And we've got a few different ways we can do that, right? So we have here, slope is 1/2. This is our m. And the y-intercept is 8. That's our b. So we don't have to do any math here. We just have to write our equation. Y equals 1/2 x plus b. 1/2 x plus 8. Okay, second equation, second problem here. Oh, it doesn't give me m or b. Now it just gives me 2 ordered pairs. So step 1 is I have to find m. So I'm going to use the slope formula. Y minus y over x minus x. 4 minus 10 over -2 minus 8. -6 over -10, which would simplify to 3/5. So there's my slope. So my equation is going to be y equals 3/5 x plus b. And then in step 2, I got to solve for b. So I'm going to take one of these ordered pairs, one set of x's and y's. I like the one that doesn't have any negative signs. I don't like to work with negatives. And I'm going to plug it in for x and y to my equation to solve for b. So when y is 10, x is 8. So now I'm solving for b. So this is 8 over 1. So 10 equals, I'm not giving myself room down here. 3 times 8 is 24 over 5 plus b. And then I've got to subtract 24 over 5 from both sides. So we have to subtract 24 over 5 from both sides of our equal sign. So I'm going to move up here. 10 minus 24 over 5 equals, and then we subtracted it from this side, b. So we have to turn 10 into a fraction. Should have written it side by side. It has a 5 on the bottom, right? This is 10 over 1. So to make the bottom of 5, I multiply by 5. So I've got to do the same thing to the top. So it's going to become 50 over 5. So 50 over 5 minus 24 over 5 equals 26 over 5, which is B. Okay, so we're not done, almost. Our equation will be y equals 3/5 x plus, and you can either write 26/5 or you can write 5 1/5 if you wanted to change it to a mixed number. I would accept either one at this point because that's a lot of work. And then there's another example here you can try. I'm not going to work it out because I don't have all the room. Maybe I do. Okay, the slope would be, I'm going to do it in my head. Step 1, slope, y minus y is 0 on top. So the slope here is 0. When our y values are the same, the slope is 0. And the only type of line that has a 0 slope is a horizontal line. And if you think about the graph, it makes sense, right? If I go over 3 and up, if I go over backwards -1 and up 3, or forward 7 and up 3, my line's going to have to go through those 2 points, right? So it's going to have to go side to side. So my slope is 0, so my equation is going to be y equals 0x plus b. So when I do find the b-intercept in step 2, I'm going to plug, let's use 7 and 3. When y is 7, when y is 3, x is 7, and 0 times anything cancels out, so b equals 3. So my equation is actually going to be y equals mx is going to be 0 times x, which will always cancel out. If the slope is 0, 0 is always multiplied by x, so it's always going to cancel that x variable out. So all our equation is going to have is the b hanging off the end, which is 3. That's our entire equation of our line because it's a horizontal line. Sorry, that was all squished in there. Okay, so to go over that, speaking of horizontal lines, here's the little section of notes where it kind of points out those 2 kind of exceptions, those vertical lines and those horizontal lines. So do not forget this because you will see these on your assignments and on tests and on the EOC. You will see them, so you need to remember. This is super important that you remember how this goes. All right, horizontal and vertical line equations. Fill in the blanks, then write a graph and example, then graph an example. The equation of a horizontal line is y equals b, where b is the y-intercept of the line. Okay, so for example, if we wrote y equals 4, and we come over here to our graph, if I was going to graph y equals 4, on the y-axis, I would go up 1, 2, 3, 4, put a dot. Now I know my line crosses through that point, but I don't know which way it goes, but my equation of my line doesn't even have an x variable in it, right? If there's no x variable, that means my line never crosses the x-axis ever, even way on down the road past just the graph part that we can see, because it's an infinite line. So the only type of line that's never going to cross x but will cross through this point is a line parallel to x. It's a horizontal line. So y equals a number is always a horizontal line, and horizontal lines have a slope of 0. We'll write that too. Horizontal lines, slope is always 0. And then of course the slope of a vertical line is undefined because you end up, your slope has a 0 in the denominator and you can't have a fraction with 0 in the denominator. So the equation of a vertical line is x equals a, where a is the x-intercept. Now so far we haven't talked about an x-intercept, right? We talked about slope-intercept, which has the y-intercept, but we've never really dealt with the x-intercept yet. So here, if I wrote x equals -2, let's say, when I'm over here on my graph, on the x-axis, I'm going to go over to -2 and put a dot. My line crosses through there, but there is no y value in my equation. There's no 2y or, there's no y term. If there's no y in my equation, that means my line's never going to cross the y-axis. So the only type of line that can cross through this point but never go over y has to be parallel to y. So it's a vertical angle. Okay, so when you have a horizontal line, you'll just see y equals a number. When you have a vertical line, you'll see x equals a number. And vertical slopes are undefined. There is no slope. You can't have it. Okay, almost done. I promise. I'm hurrying. Hopefully this is helping you guys. Write a parallel or perpendicular equation. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. Y equals mx plus b. For a line perpendicular to this line going through this point. Okay, well, they pretty much give us the slope here, right? Our slope isn't the same as this equation, but it's perpendicular to that. This equation has nothing to do with anything. It's not our equation. We don't care about anything except for the slope. And our line is going to be perpendicular to this slope. So if this slope is positive 1 over 5, our slope is going to be negative 5 over 1, or just negative 5. That's our slope, okay? So then we have to find b. So now I know my equation is y equals negative 5x plus b. So to solve for b, I have to plug in an x and a y, and it gives me an x and a y right here. When x is 2, y is 0. So I'm going to use 0 equals negative 5 times 2 plus b. Now I can solve for b, right? 0 equals negative 10 plus b. I add 10 on both sides of my equal sign. So b equals positive 10. And once I know what b is, I can write my equation y equals negative 5x plus 10. That's my equation of my line. I had to find the slope first, and then I had to find b. Hopefully this is like you're starting to see the pattern and what we're doing and it's sinking in. Write an equation in slope-intercept form. So again, same thing. That's the easiest one to use, the one we do the most math with. For a line parallel to this line, okay? So we don't really care about that entire equation, we just care about the slope. If our line is parallel to this line, they have the same slope. So I don't care about anything else, just the slope. So I know that my slope is going to be the same as this, negative 3/4. And then it passes through point negative 3/6. So I'm going to use that to solve for b, right? So step 2 here, solve for b. I'm going to use y equals negative 3/4 x plus b. I'm going to plug a 6 in for y and a negative 3 in for x. 6 equals negative 3/4 times negative 3 plus b. 6 equals 9/4 plus b. Okay, now I have to subtract 9/4 from both sides of my equal sign. But in order to subtract 9/4 from 6 over 1, I have to change 6 over 1 to a fraction with 4 on the bottom. So if I multiply the bottom by 4, I have to multiply the top by 4. So this is going to become 24 over 4. Okay, so if I bring it here, 24 over 4 minus 9 over 4 is going to equal b. And so I just subtract the top. That's 15 over 4 equals b, which would also be 3 3/4. You can change it to a mixed number or not. I don't care at this point. And then we have y equals negative 3 over 4x plus either 15 over 4 or 3 3/4. That would be our equation of our line. All right, and last problem. It's a word problem, so we do have to do these. An apartment complex charges $525 per month plus a $750 annual maintenance fee. $525 per month. So it depends, the amount changes depending on the number of months you've been there, plus $750. Write an equation to represent the total first year's cost, A, for our months of rent. So for that first equation, instead of y equals mx plus b, we're going to write A equals mr plus b. So this is our slope, this is our rate of change, or our slope, right? This is our just constant number that doesn't ever change. So what number changes? $525 per month or just an annual $750? The monthly fee changes, right? If you've been there 1 month, you pay $525 in the year. If you've been there 6 months, you're gonna pay a lot more than that, right? So it depends on the number of months are. So we're gonna say A equals $525R plus, and then it always charges just a yearly $750 fee. So that's the equation for our first apartment thing there. Then compare this rental cost to a complex which charges a $200 annual maintenance fee, like the $750 annual maintenance fee, but $600 per month. $600 per month. If a person expects to stay in an apartment for 1 year, which complex offers the better rate? Okay, so now we gotta write the other equation. A equals MR plus B. So we're gonna write A equals, their monthly fee was $600 times the number of months of rent plus a $200 annual maintenance fee. So what we notice here is that one complex charges less per month, but a really big one-time-a-year fee, and the other one charges more per month, but a really small one-time-a-year fee. Well, it's not really small, but a smaller one-time-a-year fee. So the question is, if R is 12, if we rent an apartment for 12 months, which one has a lower annual fee, right? Total cost. Okay, so if I plug 12 in here, I don't have my calculator. Dang it, I'll do long multiplication. 525 times 12. I get $6,300 for the year for this guy. If you have your calculator, you are welcome to use that. And for this guy, if I plug a 12 in for R, because it says 1 year, that's 12 months, it charges per month. So for the second guy, 600 times 12. That's 70, oh, and I didn't add the 750, sorry, my B. This is 7050. I didn't add the 750. To those of you that noticed, good job. All right, so for this one, it's $7,200 just for the monthly rent, plus the $200 maintenance fee. So this one is $7,400 for the year. So which one has a better rate? Which one offers a better rate for us is the lower rate, right? This guy, the one that charges less per month, but the really big yearly maintenance fee. The one that charges more per month, but the really small maintenance fee looks like it might be a better deal, but those 12 months add up. This is $75 less a month. 75 times 12, that's a big chunk of change, right? That makes a big difference. $350 a year. So there you go. All right, let me know if you have questions.